Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I am assistant lecturer Lamia Hadi. I will talk about the somitogenesis and myogenesis. Now, the skeletal system develops from the paraxial mesoderm, somatic layers, and neural crest. The somatic layers of the lateral plate of the mesoderm as the bone of the shoulder and the pelvic cradle bones of the limbs. Here you can see this is the neural tube and the mesoderm. It's divided into three layers: the paraxial mesoderm, the intermediate mesoderm, and the lateral plate mesoderm. Now, first, the paraxial mesoderm. The paraxial mesoderm during the third week, the mesoderm on the side of the midline, example, paraxial. This layer develops into a segmental tissue block on the side of the neural tube. This is the neural tube. This tissue is called the somitomeres. The somitomeres developed in the head regions and forming the head mesenchyma. This block developed more to forming the somites. Somite in the regions from the occipital to the caudal end of the trunk. This is the somite. And the pulse of the somite occurs first in the cervical region at the 10th day, and then proceeds cephalocaudally, forming 3 somatic pairs each day. Finally, 42 to 44 somatic pairs develop at the end of the 5th week as following: 4 occipital, 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 8 to 10 coccygeal. The first occipital and the last 5 to 7 coccygeal disappear. The other somites form the axial skeleton. إذن السومايت راح تعطينا الأكزال skeleton. During the 4th week, each of the somites has 2 parts. The ventral middle part, that is called the sclerotum. This is the sclerotum, which differentiated into a loosely woven connective tissue of the embryonic mesenchyme, surrounded the notochord and the spinal cord. These mesenchymal differentiated later, forming a fibroblast, chondroblast, and the osteoblast of the vertebral column. During the 4th week, each of the somites has 2 parts. The first, a dorsolateral plate that forms the dermomyotome. This is the dermomyotome. The dermatome form the derms and subcutaneous tissue of the skin having segmental nerve supply. then هذه اللي هي الديرماتوم. while the myotomes form the muscles of the back. Cells from this group migrate to form muscles of the body wall and limbs. You can see this is the dorsolateral part of the somite forming the dermatome and the myotome. The dermatome forming the derms and subcutaneous tissue of the skin and supply with the nerve. الميوتome forming the muscles of the back. Cells from this group migrate to forming the muscles of the body wall and the limbs. Now, the second part of the skeletal systems, the neural crest. A neural crest, the cells lying on the lateral border of the fold, the neural plate. This is the neural plate. In midline regions of the ectoderm. They occur in the third week of the development and they forms the mesenchymal tissue that migrate in the head mesoderm. This is the neural crest. And you can see the midline regions of the ectoderm. Forming to the mesenchymal tissue. These tissue migrate into the head mesoderm. There are many structures derived from the neural crest, such as the connective tissue and the bones of the face and the skull, the ganglia of the cranial nerve, C cells of the thyroid gland, and the truncal septum of the heart, adenine blast cells, derms of the face and in neck, spinal ganglia, autonomic ganglia, adrenal medulla, Schwann cells, Gleis cells, melanocytes and arachnoid and pia mater, leptomeninges. Now the myogenesis. Myogenesis is the formations of the muscles tissue during the embryonic development from the stem cells in the mesoderm. Then myogenesis derived from the mesoderm. The muscular system consists of the skeletal, the smooth, and the cardiac muscles. First, the smooth muscles. The smooth muscles are derived from the visceral layers of the lateral plate of the mesoderm. احنا قلنا الميزودرم consists of the three layers. The paraaxial mesoderm forming the somites. Somite later forming the axial skeleton. Second part of the mesoderm, intermediate mesoderm, and third the lateral plate. The lateral plate divided by the intra-embryonic cavity forming a two-layer somatic layers and visceral layers. Smooth muscles derived from the visceral layers of the lateral plate. Forming the smooth muscles of the GIT wall and the vascular wall of the GIT. Some of the smooth muscles are derived from the ectoderm, include papillary muscles, muscles of the breast, and sweat gland. Now, the second part of the muscular system, the cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscles derived also the visceral layers of the lateral plate of the mesoderm, surrounded the endothelial hard tube. Myoplasts adhere to one another by special attachment that lateral develop into an intercalated disc, while myofibril develop as in skeletal muscles, but myoplasts do not fuse. During later development, a few special bundles of the muscles cells with irregular distribute myofibrils become visible. These bundles, the Purkinje fiber, forming the conducting systems of the heart. The third part of the muscular system is skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are derived from paraxial mesoderm. Paraxial mesoderm, these forming somites and somitomeres. Somite from the occipital to the sacral regions, while somitomeres in the head region, cephalic to occipital somite. Exceptions are the muscles of the head region that are derived from mesoderm of the pharyngeal arches. Now, striations of the skeletal muscles, myofibril, develop at the end of the third month. The 7 somitomeres of the head regions on the cephalic side of the occipital somites give rise to skeletal muscles of the head, including muscles of the tongue. The pattern of these muscles is irregular by the connective tissue derived from the neural crest. And exceptions are the muscles of the rise that are derived from the ectoderm. Some of the muscles of the head are derived from the mesoderm of the pharyngeal arch. And then the muscles of the rise derived from the ectoderm. Some muscles of the head are derived from the mesoderm of the pharyngeal arch. Now, the upper limb develop opposite the lower cervical and the upper thoracic. Then the upper lipid develop opposite the lower cervical and the upper thoracic. limb develop opposite the lower four lumbar and upper sacral segmental. Therefrom, the muscles of the upper and the lower limb are supplied by the segmental spinal nerve of the same segments. The nerve not only supply the muscles but also promotes the development. Thank you.